So if you're ever doing this for the enemy, because that's part of this practice, doing this for the enemy, loving kindness doesn't come tripping off the tongue very easily when you think of this person. And so friendliness or some other similar translation might be better when you're thinking about that. You just don't want them to get run over by a truck. And sometimes, that's the best you can do for this person, right? But of course, whenever you're doing this practice for the enemy, as we call it, it's always best to start with a person who is only a little bit annoying. So often when we hear the enemy, we often go to our arch enemy, the person we just hate on this planet, the absolute most, and do this practice for them. But we're saying, no, don't do that, because you're not ready for that yet. You're not ready for that yet. So just start with the little things. Start where it's easy, right? And that's really important in this practice. It's very important. The traditional way that we do a loving kindness meditation is we start with what we think is easy, and then go to the more difficult people later. So traditionally, we do loving kindness for ourselves, then loving kindness for a loved one, loving kindness for a neutral person, and then loving kindness for the enemy. Because that's the person who's furthest away from your heart. That's not always easy for us to do. This progression is not always easy for us Westerners to follow, because to be perfectly frank, we normally just really hate ourselves. We're so bad to ourselves in the West. When we think of loving kindness for ourselves, there's this instant block in our heart, we can't do it. And so the way that I do loving kindness meditation is a little bit different. Because this kind of traditional progression kind of assumes that we've been in Buddhist practice, for all of our life. So we grew up in Buddhism, and we've been starting from when we were a little kid, like they do in Buddhist countries. Now, they don't even start with meditation in Buddhist countries when you're little. They just start with you bow, you learn some basic respect, you learn virtue, and those types of morality types of things. And then eventually they will get to meditation. But by that time you get to a loving kindness meditation, it's really easy for you to have loving kindness for yourself, because they kind of grew up in that. Here, we didn't grow up in this, by and large. Maybe some of us did. I certainly didn't. So we do it in a way where we can have loving kindness for ourselves, because that is the most important kind of loving kindness we can have for ourselves. Nothing is more important than that. Loving kindness is the first of the 4 heart practices in Buddhism, or the Brahma Viharas, which means the divine abodes. So that's how important it is. So the first one is loving kindness, and everything builds on loving kindness. So this is our base. This is our foundation. This loving kindness for ourselves, right? Because if you can have loving kindness for yourself, everything is easy. You can't really have loving kindness for another person, but not yourself. That'd be really, really hard. Because how do you even know what that loving kindness feels like if you can't love yourself? That's kind of where we're coming from. And so we can find a gentler way to get to loving kindness for ourselves, which is what we're going to do today. So how we're going to do this is we're going to spend a few minutes just kind of getting into focusing on the breath. And then we're going to do loving kindness. We'll just start. There it goes. All right. Let's begin. So just allow your eyes to close. Making sure you have that nice and comfortable seated position so you're not likely to move around too much. So, to the degree that you can be still in your seated position, more likely you are to get really concentrated and make this a really effective meditation. So just get comfortable. Making sure the spine is straight and upright. No tension anywhere in the body. So let's just take a deep breath all the way in and all the way out. Not forcing the breath now, just letting it be quite easy and quite natural. But paying careful attention to the in and the out breath. So when you're breathing in, know that you're breathing in. And when you're breathing out, know that you're breathing out. So just following that breath all the way in and just notice where you feel it in the body. Letting that breath nourish all parts of the body. Breathing back out. And so, to begin our practice of loving kindness, we're going to think of a loved one, someone who's very close to your heart, perhaps not a spouse or partner. Everyone else is fair game. If you really want to do it, you can. So just call this person to mind, and you call to mind what this person meant to you. You call to mind all of their good qualities. Just wanting that to continue. And you do this practice just right by repeating phrases. Some traditional phrases are, may you be happy. May you be safe from inner and outer danger. May you be well in body and mind. May you be at peace and live at ease in this world. You can choose one or more of those phrases, or choose a phrase of your own invention, so long as it has a loving and a kind intention. Without attachment, of course. You can do this for one or more than one loved one. So we'll do this for just the next few minutes, loving kindness for our loved